Well, Kentucky's minimum wage will remain $7.25 an hour in 2026, leaving the state increasingly out of step with a growing number of states that are boosting their pay floors next year. And we did some checking on that.
Kentucky is among 19 states that follow a minimum set at the federal level of $7.25. Those rates have not changed since 2009. Kentucky prevents cities from imposing their own higher minimum wages. Lexington's Urban County Council tried to do that back in 2015, but the Kentucky Supreme Court ruled cities lack authority to set wages above the state or federal floor.
Most states with raised or indexed their minimum wages have scheduled increases to take effect in 2026, and that pushes their state minimums well above the federal level and Kentucky's. Washington state will require the highest at $17.13 an hour. There are senators, including Lexington's Reggie Thomas, who have filed bills every year since 2017 to try to increase the minimum wage, but to no avail. Senator Thomas says he would like to see the minimum wage gradually increased in Kentucky to $15 an hour.
Such a wide range all across the U.S.